Hello. Welcome to the Strawberry Greenhouse webinar. Apologies for being a little bit late. We have a very special episode webinar this week. Before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for showing up. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties getting one of our panelists in, but as soon as he is in, we will have two special guests. This webinar series is hosted by Ceres Greenhouse Solutions, and today we will be exploring the subject of growing strawberries in a controlled environment. My name is Miriam, and I'll be the host for today's event. We also have Haley here to help with facilitating questions and keeping us on topic, and two special guests. Claas is having some technical issues, but when he joins us, Claas Ahrens is the founder of vGreens. He holds a master's degree in supply chain management and logistics and brings extensive experience from leadership roles in international companies, including Amazon. His commitment to sustainable innovation is reflected in his leadership of a solar car development initiative prior to founding vGreens. We also have Sebastian Pook. Sebastian is a plant production systems designer at Koerber Technologies in Hamburg, Germany, with over 10 years of experience in system engineering and automation. He has led innovative projects in indoor farming. Sebastian aims to revolutionize farming practices through cutting-edge technology. And as usual, we have our regular panelists, Josh and Marc. In order to maximize their time together, I'm going to skip over their bios and introductions. So if you'd like to learn more about their roles and backgrounds, please check out one of our past webinars on our YouTube channel or visit our website. We invite you to ask questions at any point given in the Q&A section. Please keep the questions relevant to the topic at hand, or we will skip over them. Also, this event is being recorded and will be available on demand in a follow-up email and on our YouTube channel and website. It is unlikely we will get to all of the questions. We had many interesting questions. So as a bonus, we will make an additional recording of the questions we did not get to and send those out in the follow-up email. And before we get into it, we have to just do a quick disclaimer. The information provided during this webinar is for general informational purposes only and is based on the expertise and knowledge of our greenhouse specialists. The advice and recommendations provided are intended to assist attendees in understanding various greenhouse systems. Participants are encouraged to consult with a qualified professional or conduct further research to address any specific concerns or requirements they may have. The hosts and organizers of this webinar are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information presented. And with that, I'd like to just hand the mic over to Josh to do just a brief introduction to strawberry greenhouse growing.
Hi, thank you, Miriam. First of all, we wanted to welcome Sebastian to the conversation. We're happy to have him here with us from Northern Germany. It's later in the evening for him, so we appreciate that. And we thought a good way to start off the conversation would be just to speak about strawberries in general. We realize you probably have a wide range of people who are interested, who like to eat strawberries, some who probably grow strawberries, and some who are curious about how we will be growing strawberries in the future. So I think we're going to try and capture all that as best we can. And so I'll just start sharing really quick. So this is like an idealistic image of maybe a pick your own strawberry field where there's like a nice woman picking strawberries for her family. The plants are kind of dense. They sit on the ground. And this is what we think of probably when we're harvesting strawberries. In reality, this is what we are most used to probably, whether you're shopping at Costco or wherever you're shopping, is strawberries are probably harvested in California, maybe Mexico for the United States, and then shipped across the country, which is a model that works. But I think we can all attest that strawberries aren't the most delicious when we eat them from the store. They look like strawberries. They don't always taste like strawberries.
They don't taste all that good.
And that has to do with when they're harvested, how far they're shipped, all the things. Outside conditions, whatever else. And part of the goal here is to talk about the pros and cons of this, because there's pros and cons to this type of growing, and also what we're seeing now in the industry, and really with strawberries, it's a rapidly developing moment for how we're going to grow strawberries, I think. I mean, that's our take on this.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about what the future of strawberries may look like. There's several different ways it could go, or maybe it will go several different ways depending on the quality of strawberry that we're trying to buy. And so this is just an introduction and a conversation about those things, good, bad, all the stuff.
I think the most beautiful thing to know is for all of us who love strawberries, I am one of those fans. When you eat them fresh from the plants at home, the taste is just so different than what you're getting in the store, at least in most of the stores that we go to. And we believe that there are ways to make strawberries more tasty the way that you would harvest them on the outside. In our garden, they grow mostly in June, beginning of July. This just also happens to be the time that mostly I travel. And so mostly I take care of all the plants until they start to get red berries, and then I leave for a few weeks. And when I come back, there are no more berries left. So I don't often get to that, and we believe that there's ways to grow those berries on larger scales, but also locally around the major urban centers, as well as in more rural areas. And so we'll talk more about that.
Okay. So I think that's a good start. So we can dive into
the questions.
Yeah. So let's jump ahead to a question for Josh and Marc, or whoever would like to answer this, about maximizing space, specifically how to maximize space in a greenhouse for strawberries. Can they be grown with other crops? And how does the equipment differ?
I think for starters, anything can be grown with anything else. So if it's in my garden at home, of course, but at scale, people who are growing strawberries are growing almost exclusively strawberries. Yeah. Strawberries like cool conditions. And so, only certain other plants could ever be grown with them. Sorry, I'm skipping through just to get to some like modern images of what strawberry grows can look like. But for the most part, people who are growing strawberries are growing strawberries. And strawberries like to get to 50 degrees Fahrenheit at a minimum.
Which is about 10 degrees Celsius.
At night, to ripen and sweeten appropriately.
Yeah.
And so we see heat as a major issue. We see fresh strawberries are in the spring because there's still cool nights. And in the fall, sometimes also there's another round of strawberries, and the exterior temperature, the air temperature is the driver of those things.
We have with us Claas, now he's just there, who is the strawberry expert. He works for a startup, is the owner of a startup called vGreens in Germany. They are specializing on the strawberries. So instead of us fumbling around about the strawberries, Claas, help us out here. Tell us about the strawberries, the ideal strawberries. Get us started on the berry itself that everybody's looking for.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and sorry for the delay. Yeah, I had a bit of an issue here, but that's all good now. So thanks for having me today. I hope to get some questions regarding the strawberry answered. For the last 5-6 years-ish, the strawberry has been the only crop I've been focusing. So I hope to get some things answered. And I already see you've been going throughout the pictures as I see some of our grow sticks here. So yeah, I'm very happy to answer some questions here. And if there's something direct, I'm sorry if I haven't attached all those 10 minutes. Sorry about that.
So tell us a little about temperatures, humidities. What are the conditions that the berries like to see most? And then obviously, what are you looking for in terms of what you consider to be a good berry? Meaning
Oh,
you can talk
yes.
about
So,
Brix and sugar content, etc.
yeah, no worries. So, especially at this time a year, like May, June-ish, especially in Europe, middle Europe, we
Oh,
This
oops.
is this is us. It's our internet.
Oh no.
Nope.
Nope.
phase three is down to 12, 14 at night. So basically, there's a huge difference between the day and the night temperature. So the strawberries can grow perfectly. Um, so there are different conditions which obviously affect the actual quality of a strawberry. But the strawberries themselves are measured in the quality aspect in Brix, as Marc mentioned already, in some countries around the world. So there's obviously many different factors, but one of the biggest one is size, shelf life, and Brix. So when it comes to sizes, there's different parameters from continent to continent, but especially depending, of course, on the exact. Thanks for bringing out the picture. There we have a nice, huge strawberry. But sometimes some off-takers may need smaller ones. So it depends on the retail, on the region, on the habits, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to Brix, thanks for bringing that up. You squeeze that strawberry a little bit, drip down on that obstacle, and then you can actually have a look into the actual sugar content within that drop. And that gives you a possibility to determine a certain percentage of sugar in one fruit. So let's say we face 4 to 5 Brix, then you're rather at the shoulder month. And if you get to the May, June, let's say focused strawberry time in Germany, for example, then we even reach 10, 12 Brix. But this can be yanked up even up to 20, 22% of sugar. So it's even getting sweeter from the ones we know from the field. But I think that wraps it up. What's a good strawberry so far? But as I said, there are many other aspects, but these ones are the most
Claas, people are wondering what the best variety of strawberry to grow is. Is there a best variety?
Well, you see some varieties around the globe. Some go for Albion. We've seen that many times in
German internet.
in the Netherlands. And then there has been other very famous Japanese varieties, which are even more sweeter. So there is a question you need to ask yourself: what is the best variety? Because fruit cycles feel for less flushes, or let's say less. Um, uh, how do I say? So a strawberry grows in flushes basically, and then depending on what kind of type you take, you have rather longer or shorter production cycles. So, for example, the shorter one is a June bearer. And then there are so many different varieties. I will definitely not be able to determine that one perfect strawberry variety because it's said it depends on the region. It depends on especially the availability, because this is one of the biggest issues we face, that we cannot just ship every variety everywhere in the world. So it is a lot to do with restrictions and laws and different country regulations and so on and so forth to bring a certain variety to the country. And with that knowing, we always see different varieties in different fields. So I wouldn't say there's the perfect one. We use the Favori, as we love the Favori. It's very big and sweet. It always, yeah, blows my mind how sweet we can get those ones. And it's less likely that they get any kind of diseases. So they're quite robust. So we definitely face the Favori, which is an everbearer. So it has longer production cycles. And then we get to the next topic later on when it comes to year-round production. That is one of those reasons why we look for an everbearer.
I have a question from the Q&A section. Eric asked, do most commercial strawberry growers start from seed or use starter plants? And what drives that decision?
So, there are multiple ways to grow a strawberry, or let's say propagate a strawberry. So you can inject runners at a certain protocol of environmental parameters for so-called mother plant. You know them probably from propagation. You will see those runners coming up from that mother plant. You cut those runners and then you replant them. That's one of the most common ones, which is feasible for a certain generation length. So third, fourth, fifth generation is fine, and then it goes to a certain point where the plant material wears off. Then there is a tissue culture. So you take a piece of that tissue of your plant, whether it's a leaf or somewhere else, and then you repropagate from that tissue. So there's a certain way to do that, but it's kind of costly, but probably the most efficient way to actually succeed in propagating in a homogeneous way. So not that not every plant is different. And then there's this third one where you collect the seeds, but this takes a long time to actually nurse them and bring them up to speed. So we've been doing that with the Soraya and the Delissimo from seed. These are available from ABZ, or some others are from Lim Group from the Netherlands. They have different stores around the globe. The Soraya seems to have more yield than the Delissimo. The Delissimo seems to be more sweet. But we had roughly 4 to 5 months in nursing those plants to get them up to speed. So it is always a question of availability, first things first, and then the obvious goal of economic interest. So whether you want to make money out of it or you want to have rather the best strawberries.
He always comes back.
Claas, you're a little in and out. It's working, but just so you know.
Oh, okay. We always face that German internet.
Yeah, German internet. So I'll chime in also. I was just at a strawberry grow on Tuesday, and they're having bare root strawberry plants shipped in. You know, it's a hectare, it's 2.5 acres of strawberry greenhouse, and he's having someone else's propagating their plants, and they ship them bare root plants, and then he can plop them right into a system, and then he has to grow them up some. So it takes a while to get them up to speed, but that's another option for a smaller scale or maybe a less sensitive growing operation that's not so worried about biosecurity.
But that's the disadvantage if you buy them.
Yeah, I mean that's worth saying. So tissue culture would be the potential highest biosecure way to propagate your grow, because you're basically growing a plant in a laboratory. And especially if you're growing strawberries, which we'll get to, in something like what is behind Claas, the whole thing's a laboratory. And so you can be really stringent about how clean the grow is. In the greenhouses I was just in, 2.5 acres, used to be a some kind of bulb greenhouse. They just repurposed it. There's very little biosecurity to that operation. So having plants shipped from another facility was it wasn't a problem for them. They just didn't have an issue with it, and it was for them the easiest and maybe the most cost effective.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly what you're saying. It depends on what you have. You try to avoid a different plant material in an enclosed environment, but sometimes you take seeds or tissue culture, and
lost him again.
And if you get already plants and burst plants into the system for production.
Okay.
Okay. I think we should skip ahead to a question for Sebastian. What should one keep in mind when operating the climate controls in a facility growing strawberries, specifically speaking to temperature and humidity?
I think what's the big difference to many other crops, as Claas already mentioned, is that the strawberry likes to have a big difference between day and night temperature. So often grow systems are not set up to handle that. So if you have an HVAC system, you need to make sure that you can really reach down to those low temperatures, because that depends a lot on the variety. And if you go below, like, okay, sorry,
You can
maybe
use
it's the
Celsius,
wrong unit now,
and
but
our calculator here can translate it into Fahrenheit.
yeah, because if you go below 14 degrees of temperature or Celsius, then many water-based system will start struggling. So you need to have some kind of other setup to reach those temperatures. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges when growing strawberries indoors, and also makes it different or difficult when you repurpose systems that have been used to produce herbs or microgreens or cresses before.
What's 14C?
That's it's 60.
60 Fahrenheit. There you
Huh.
go. And something that's interesting about what Sebastian is saying. So when we think about the plant, we think about creating the environment for the plant with the greenhouse. We're currently working on some potential projects in some hot, semi-humid places in the US. And you know, it might be 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, but when we're thinking 35C, but when we're thinking about the HVAC system, we don't need to cool 100 degrees Fahrenheit to 60. We need to see what the nighttime temperatures are and then see how we can cool it, which is a smaller delta depending on the location. So sometimes if we can get there with the cooling at night, whether it's evaporative or mechanical, we have the potential to grow high quality strawberries in places where really they would not at all be happening in the middle of the summer when there's no cool evening temps.
And so the main point is, and I think that nighttime temperatures are what makes the sugar content is really what it comes to.
Yeah. And also the big advantage of doing it like Josh just suggested is that when you shift down from the daytime temperatures to the nighttime temperature, you often otherwise would have a lot of condensation water as well. So if you use the filtered outside air, then you also save a lot of energy there, because you don't need to condense all that water out of the air.
Do you want to say anything about humidity, Sebastian? What kind of humidity levels are good? Or I mean, both of you, that's really a question to both of you.
Claas can say more specifics, but I will just say it depends, because it's that's always the case, and there's a lot of dependencies on the variety.
So Claas, give us a number, give us a few numbers for the humidity and for the light levels, maybe? You want to say something about that?
Yeah, not a problem at all. So maybe to give a direct number on the humidity, relative humidity is 85% daytime. So we try to catch that and don't get too humid. At nighttime, it differs, as Sebastian already said. It depends, so there's not a right or wrong in particular, because it
You will come back.
And so it's rather producing leaves or strawberries, and that is relating to the humidity. So we normally go for 85 at daytime and sometimes even above 95 at nighttime. So that is on the humidity side. But as said, on the greenhouse level, sometimes you're not able to achieve that in a commercial style. So you need to sometimes have restrictions on the humidity, and that also affects other parameters as well. Because in the end, you have
Apologies for the internet.
Yes.
roughly 9. I am so sorry. Can you not hear me?
No, you keep going.
Yeah, it's a little hard, and it's okay. I mean, we make fun of the German internet. It just
I'm so sorry. I can't afford Starlink yet. I'm sorry. Oh well, and you asked for the probably the
light levels. So what is a DLI, the daily light interval, or the PPFD level, which is the anything about that?
So we go in with currently roughly 230 ppfd, as well as a DLI of 16 hours. So yeah, basically on this variety, Propori, you go roughly with this kind of cycle where you have the ramp up, then you have the full production, which is like roughly 14, 15 hours, and then you have the sunset basically within your facility. And yeah, as well here, if you have a greenhouse, then you have supplemental lights representing that, for example, in wintertime, if we look at Canada, if you have short days, and then you try to enlarge those numbers to 16 hours a day.
Miriam,
Yes.
give us more.
Let's talk about powdery mildew. How do you control for it? How effective is UVC in particular? And just some basics on pest management strategies, again, for Claas or whoever else wants to take that question.
Yeah, sure. I'll just go ahead. Sebastian, please fill up the gaps from our end, I'd say. Um, as we are using basically everything we can go for, from ozone, H2O2 to UVC, you named it, to beneficials. So basically taking those insects which are good for the plant and eating up the bad insects. For example, if you have aphids or spider mites, or the already mentioned fungicide, which is like powdery mildew, fungus, where we normally know about fungicides, which then take care of that. So all in all, you have pesticides or fungicides and other biological ways to take control over your pests. And by doing so, there's always like an immune system which need to be brought into that system by, for example, little bags we get from the company Koerber, in which we bring out our beneficials. So we have that kind of immune system of other mites eating spider mites. So there's always a little war going on between beneficial and pests. But sometimes you obviously get so much diseases in terms of powdery mildew. We are doing tests with the mulling ace. Anyway, so there is different varieties which are more related to powdery mildew. And this powdery mildew is obviously affected by the UVC. So whenever a UVC is getting to the powdery mildew, it's very effective. So it can clear out in a very short amount of time. But sometimes you have powder mildew underneath a leaf, and then it's hard to reach for the UVC, as you as a human shouldn't be involved in that practice. So is it as a safety hazard? That's how we get sunburned and even worse. So we shouldn't be included here. And sometimes even ozone helps. So we actually bring in ozone, which is also a safety hazard, as it always takes away the air we actually should breathe. So we shouldn't be involved here as well. So sometimes you cannot really make 100% sure that those measures actually apply to the plant 100%. And then the very, very much worst case is rather getting rid of the plant or using fungicide or pesticide.
A few thoughts on that. In the grows that I've been in recently, when they start, and this is not in an indoor, this is in a greenhouse grow, they're utilizing several different strains in the beginning to identify a strain that works best in that location. So I was just in a location in Washington State. It was pretty gray and wet. What works well there might not work as well in a dry, sunnier place. And so as they're starting their operation, they're testing what strain of berry yields the best, deals with, the environmental conditions the best, all those kinds of things. So there's no answer for all grows. It's different everywhere based on the environment that can be provided for the plants. The other thought that I just had is when we're doing a greenhouse, and especially for something like strawberries, we'll use a UV transmissive glazing. Where, Claas, when you're thinking about it, I think you're thinking about you're adding UVC lights that you maybe run when people aren't in the room. We're going to let that UV in through the glazing onto the plants as if it's outside, which like Claas said, is a deterrent for powdery mildew. And we've seen it in, where we've replaced polycarbonate with ETFE, that powdery mildew, I wouldn't say it just completely goes away, but it almost completely goes away. It's really,
I think it's controllable. But yeah, sometimes I don't know. What we had once was the air conditioning wasn't at this particular point working the way it should. It only took a weekend for this
Oh, what happened that weekend?
Well,
thing. Another things play out in the favor of powder milk.
I mean, that's something we know from many experiences, that when you get pests and you are possibly not there for a day or two and you're just getting at the wrong time, it
Yeah.
can take over. It can take over a monoculture like nothing else, right? That's the
Yes.
monoculture disadvantage. On the other hand, it allows for very efficient harvesting, and we'll get into the harvesting questions and the automations, which is really what Sebastian is here. So at some point, we'll get to those questions as well.
Okay, this might be a good segue, just really quick. Someone asked about nutrient levels depending on the stage of the plant, but maybe we can blend that with types of growing.
Well, I think nutrient level is interesting. Brix is kind of the guideline here, the driver of value of strawberry. I mean, it's like these high-end strawberries that we're seeing where you buy a 6-pack for $50 or something, which is a new trend. These are high Brix level strawberries. Like what? They're like 20, Claas? 15 to 20?
Yeah, I mean, we know a couple of brands going for the very good ones, and they mainly go for 12 and above, I'd say. 20 is very, very,
really high.
like
Okay.
very
So,
rare.
so there's a, like, what we're used to in the US anyways, is a strawberry that's harvested from the field earlier than it really wants to be harvested. It's not ripe. And then it is shipped for whatever days, and then it's in the store for whatever days. And when we eat it, which is like the experience, it's just not that good. And it probably has a Brix of like 5 or something.
Yeah, that's common. We face that in Europe as well, from Africa. We face that in the Middle East from Africa. We face that from Singapore, from.
So, sorry, back to this. So when I was just at this grow, and this is, not high tech by any means, kind of an older greenhouse. But these strawberries, which are just Albion, it's the standard variety that I think most people are buying at their grocery store. The whole idea here is when they're harvested. And so they're harvested at peak ripeness, which is not something that we're used to in the stores. So this is just a timing thing. When you eat this strawberry harvested at the right time, and again, this is minimal control, no lights in the greenhouse. These were showing a Brix 12. And it's not a specialty strain. It's not even super high-tech grow. But the strawberry, you eat it and it's amazing. It's firm, it's delicious, it's all the things that you're really looking for, which gives the grower a huge opportunity to sell his product for more money. And mostly because this guy is in an area between 2 urban centers. So there's 2 big markets for him, and he can harvest and they can be in the store the next day. And he can have a strawberry business.
But I did want to say for people to just also recognize that Brix number is the sugar content, but it is inversely proportional to the yield. Meaning, if you want a high yield, your Brix numbers will be lower. And if you cut down the number of strawberries that each plant can supply, you can go to higher Brix numbers. So that's something that you also need to be aware of, that that you're not going to get to 20 with having the same quantity that you would otherwise get, right?
I'm curious for Sebastian or Claas, is that true? Like, if you're feeding them appropriately, do you really have to cut down on the number of flowers like significantly, or I think it has to do with plant intake as much as it has to do with anything else.
Yeah,
I would. You go ahead, Sebastian.
fine, but so in most cases it's still quantity versus quality, because even if you're feeding the plant perfectly, there's a limit to what it can do. So it helps to set down, but of course a lot is also regarding to the growth parameters around, so where you end up with. So you can really move the average of what you have, you can move it around quite a lot, and it's not necessarily if it's high tech or not. Just you need the right kind of climate for your crop, and then you can really get them to the highest potential.
Yeah,
Exactly. So a certain inverse correlation between yield and Brix can be seen. But of course, if you harvest too early, the Brix has not developed yet. So if you would have had developed them the same time, you would probably still get the same yield with better Brix. But it also comes at a downside on shelf life, because if a strawberry has more Brix, it starts getting moldy very fast. So the higher the Brix, you can definitely say the lower the shelf life. So if you ship from California to New York, of course you would try to ship something with 5 Brix rather than 10 Brix, and rather sacrifice the let's say awesome quality measures. But we see a trend where this might differ, and this will bring the decentralized production methods into the game again. So in the end, you can grow in any pot if you have 22 degrees at daytime, 14 degrees at nighttime, a certain amount of fertilizer. That's
Thought we would get one section without interruption.
so good.
But you asked about types of growing, Haley, and I think we could talk about that because that's kind of fun. So we showed outdoor pictures before, and I'll just roll back to this. So here's field grown. This is a traditional strawberry field, labor intensive, brutal, hard work, all the things, but seasonal. Marc, this was where?
There's a greenhouse in Holland before it is planted. And the part here is just you have individual gutters in which the plants will go. And in between, you have these carts that go up and down the hallway, the line, so that you can actually pick the berries, right? So this is a very labor intensive work. The person picking will not only pick, but also inspect the plants to see if they're happy and to produce good strawberries. So that's a really energy efficient and not very space efficient way of growing. And a part of why we have Sebastian here is we did want to talk about the automation part, which is what.
Okay, we're gonna get there. Hold your.
Well, wait, we have 15 minutes
Okay,
left.
okay,
So
hold
we're
on.
gonna do that soon.
So really quick.
It's a good it's a good start there, because
Yeah.
what even though both grow systems are still like on the open field, and here it's very labor intensive, you can already see that you have a huge improvement, because in a factory like this, or in a greenhouse setup like this, you already get there that the workers have to do a lot less bending, for example. They can work on an ergonomic height, which also leads that it's not only nicer for the workers, but that also the work can go faster.
Yeah.
So even if you're not yet on a fully automated level, just changing the setup can also make a big difference for you, because to use a gutter system like this, for one thing, you also don't necessarily need to have a greenhouse. I've seen even hobby growers just use rain gutters and growing strawberries inside of that, so they don't have to bend over, or for old people, for example. So there's still, even if you don't go to a super high-tech level, there's a lot of things that you can do to make the work easier.
But I think the big thing that we notice when we're looking at these pictures is the space inefficiency in this greenhouse. This is one strawberry gutter, and then what, 2 or 3 feet, almost a meter of space, and then one more gutter. And so most of the greenhouse is not strawberry. Most of the greenhouse is cart rolling for labor. And as we go through this progression quickly, we will see that we're condensing the space to try and maintain the same amount of yield.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're ideally making labor more efficient. So this is that same grow. So you can't really see how the gutters are spaced, but with plants in it. This is the one I visited last week. These are old repurposed greenhouses. There's nothing super high tech about it. What was cool about this system is that these are gutters and they fill the whole space. There's no walkways. And then when you want to work a row, you flip a switch and here's a tooth arm and they go vertical. And so you can create walkway to work the row and to harvest. And so this increases the yield, they said by 40 to 50%. So now we're starting to, this is for a greenhouse, a fairly good way to do it because you're just using a single plane, but you're filling the whole space with plants. And then you can go vertical when you're working the plants. And when you exit the room, you can go back to a single plane and they all get sunlight. So this is also labor intensive, but again, as we were just saying, versus outdoor, all the fruit hangs on this ribbon or over this ribbon. So as the plants kick out flowers and start to grow, you pull it over. So as you roll down the aisle, the fruit is very accessible. You're not missing anything underneath leaves or anything like that. So there's a labor savings here, but we're still using a fair amount of labor. The strawberries were delicious. Okay, this is Claas's, and this is...
Yeah, and there is the... Sebastian, maybe you want to talk about what the next vision of the strawberry growing is that you and Claas are working together on, right?
And Sebastian, I have this, and I also have some images of this. So you tell me what you want to show, and you can talk about it.
I think both very interesting. So in this image, you cannot see strawberries, sadly, so it's just salads, but it's a comparable system. And here, the nice thing is that you have quite big modules that you can move around. And of course, it's very high degree of automation. And I think if you now show the images from the other greenhouse, you can see how big these units can get. Because just scaling this up, here you can, I think this is gives a good impression of the scale, because when you want to automate it and have not people walking around, but have the plants be moved to the pickers, for example, it makes sense to keep the individual units as big as possible, so you don't have to move that many units per day. And in this system, of course, this is in a greenhouse and it's not automated. But I think it really shows already the where we are heading if we go in a vertical setup, because you can also Claas background can also see how it's up when you scale it up and do it indoors. And so what cannot really be seen here, so all of these units, they can be moved out, and then they can be moved to a harvesting station. So when you do that, you have the advantage that the people don't have to move around, or you can also, instead of people, you can have robotics for harvesting. But still, when you so in both cases, you have the advantage that you have very highly specialized stations. So all of the work can be done at the maximum speed. So the robots don't have to move around. So you can have really robotic systems that are that are really fast and precise, and you don't have to move around smaller robots, for example. And when you do the same with humans, they can work on can have a fixed workspace where everything they need is installed. They can have scales and labeling, and all of these things really help to make them as productive as possible. And also, you avoid all of these things that make it a job that's not very nice doing. So you don't have to bend a lot. You don't have to be in a hot sun, for example. You don't have to be in a rainy day on the field. But you have a very specialized station, and it just makes it a lot less tedious to do all of this work.
Yeah. So like with a facility like this, whether it's indoor or your greenhouse, your labor costs are significantly reduced. Your working conditions are really improved. Your efficiency probably goes up significantly. The downside is you have a capital expenditure to buy and install this thing, which is an upfront cost. And so it's nice, the goal here was just to show the wide range of options. And I think we're in a moment right now where nobody knows what the answer is just yet. This is all kind of new and exciting technology that it seems like is just beginning to be deployed right now. I mean, it is early in what seems like the development of the future strawberry.
Right.
Can I just jump in quickly? You just touched on OpEx and CapEx, and there were a few questions that we just wanted to at least touch on related to that. So if we could just specifically address operating costs and CapEx concerns, and specifically there was a question about operating cost per square foot. If there's anything that can be said to that, I know the answer is it varies, but if we can give the audience some idea of what to expect from different perspectives, just in closing or as a final question.
I think to start with, where you are matters. So if labor is readily available and cheap, full automation might not make sense. If you're closer to urban centers in a place where there's not a lot of labor, automation might be the thing that allows you to have a business. So those things, it's really location based. If you're in a greenhouse versus an indoor, your utility costs are going to be starkly different, sunny versus cloudy. So cost per square foot, that is too individualized, I think, to estimate.
Yeah, but I think Sebastian can probably talk about the reduction of labor, meaning people or labor cost, depending on the automation, right? I think that's a question that you can probably say something to. I know we looked at that on larger facilities. How much compared to a traditional greenhouse, which we saw, which has the individual rows where everything has to be harvested by hand, by people moving through the rows, what is the percentage of people that you can save if you don't have particular labor costs that we can give per square meter or square foot, right?
Yeah, I can give some input numbers. I think the calculation need to be done for each person themselves. But for example, now in regards of picking, so picking is also something that you not only do for fruit, but also we do it a lot in sorting centers, for example. And it really shows that when you have an ergonomic workspace, people can do the picking much faster. So for example, a person, for example, or also in the mushroom industry, so a person that has an ergonomic workspace can do up to 80 or 90 picks per minute. So using both hands, you can be doing the picking extremely fast. But then when you have to do additional steps, like bending down and not working efficiently, then this already goes down. And then when they're not that good, then you're only at around maybe 30 picks per minute, which is still quite fast. And then when the person needs to move along on the ground, is kneeling, has to shift position, or carry has to carry boxes around, this number goes even lower. And then you're like happy when the person picks like 10 strawberries in a minute, because all of that movement that is involved. So that is really the number that informs it there. Marc looks like he has another question to that.
No. I mean, I think that's what we have looked at the facilities that we've talked about. We're talking about large facility with millions of strawberries that need to be sold per year. And some of those we see labor reductions by more than by 60%, right?
Yeah.
So this makes a huge difference, and people, you don't have to look for housing. You don't, all those things that go into this and it's hard to find people that do this kind of work. It's not like I went to people all over the world picking strawberries. These are specialty people who love this kind of work, because most people wouldn't last there very long.
So this is the point where I was making. So you always need to see what makes sense for your operation. And of course, it depends a lot on the labor costs. But of course, I like building fully automated systems. So that's where I'm always aiming. But as we could see in the pictures, there's already a lot of steps in between where you can always be shaving off some time. So one of the images, people were kneeling on the ground. In the next one, you already had raised beds. And then you have standing gutter systems. And then at the end, you have something like this where the fruits come directly to you and you don't even need to move. So I think there's systems for everybody, and then you can really see how it affects. And in terms of trying it out, I can always recommend just making a test setup, just picking some things up from the floor, picking them up from a table, and just trying that out. And then you can make your calculations on how it's going to affect your labor costs. And of course, regarding CapEx versus OpEx, when you buy a robot, you pay the salary on day zero, and then it's going to be doing something for you for the next 20 years. So it always looks very expensive in the first step, but it does not mean that it's more expensive, because it's going to do the work for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's important. And really quickly, I think the moving of the plants and everything, the actual movement of the plants is probably a low operational cost. There's small motors and it's not always moving.
Yeah.
It's HVAC and lighting if you're indoor, where it costs, that's where your operating costs really come from, labor.
Yeah, so in terms of energy, we in the past, looking at many different systems, it's more or less you have like around 40 to 50% is lighting, then around 40% is HVAC again, of course, depending on what your outside temperatures are as well. And then the rest is stuff like moving irrigation water, intralogistics system, because moving around, it looks like it's a lot of work, but it's not that much, because if everything is straight and you have good ball bearings, you don't need a lot of energy to move stuff around.
Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry.
I need to jump in here real quick because we've reached the end. I need to replace. I just want to put this information up here for if anyone has any additional questions. They can send us an email at info@Ceres, or I've also put up Sebastian and Claas's information. I'll also send out an email afterwards that has this and also some of the answers to their questions. We will also be recording a separate video just answering questions that we didn't get to. So we want to provide you with as much information as possible, just because we know these things, we don't always get to all the questions. So thank you everyone for coming. And thank you to all our panelists.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks
thank
for having
you,
us.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having this round. Appreciate it.
Bye.